There are 42 unique Warframes in total, each with their own diverse set of abilities and playstyles. The Warframe abilities can be split into 5 main categories. That's Strike, Blast, Tank, Support, and Control. This video is going to focus on Nuke frames, a subset of Blast abilities. For a Warframe ability to be considered a nuke, it must deal instantaneous damage, affect all targets in the area almost simultaneously, and deal enough damage to kill, which I'm going to set at a base damage of 800. I choose 800 damage based on the Helene defense mission on Saturn, a popular affinity farming location. Properly modded, this is enough damage to clear the first few waves of enemies, though more damage will be required as the waves progress, of course. Before I dive in, do tell me in the comments below what type of playstyle or attribute you'd like to see me cover next. Under this measure of nukes, the following frames are nuke capable. That's Banshee, Ember, Equinox, Frost, Gara, Limbo, Mag, Oberon, and Rhino. Each of these frames is capable of nuking technically, though not all are born equal. Rhino, for example, has a base damage of 800 only, while Ember has a base damage of 2500. Special mention should go to Saren, whose Miasma ability is a damage over time ability with viral proc, but the initial damage tick can have a base damage of 600 when combined with her Spores ability. This gives her a clearance ability that's damaging a nuke tier in the right circumstances, and that's circumstances that she controls. Still, technically she's not a nuke frame, so I'll leave her from here out. Let's have a brief look at each nuke, starting on the low end. Rhino's Stomp is tied with Limbo for the lowest base damage, though Rhino's damage scale's a little bit better than Limbo's. Due to the very low total damage, his nuke is lacking at C tier. His damage beam Blast is weak against the weaker Grineer units, and its strength against stronger infested is neutered by Ancient Disruptors as they reduce ability damage, causing this nuke to fall off even quicker. It does have the joint third highest range of all nukes, but it's still weak. Rhino Stomp carries good crowd control in the nuke, so survivors are easy pickings. Oberon's Reckoning has the third lowest base damage for the nukes, and has the joint lowest base range with Frost. His radiation damage is very strong against hardy Grineer units, helping him to maintain, but it's terrible against the infested. Overall though, low damage and low range is a hard thing to come back from in C tier. Like Rhino's Stomp, Reckoning carries good crowd control in the radiation proc, plus it supports in health orb drops. Frost's Avalanche steps up a tier in nuke capability. While his range is the joint lowest, his base damage sits at 1500, nearly double that of Rhino's. The cold damage type isn't a bad damage type overall, generally allowing you to get some good mileage out of the nuke, at least as far as B tier goes. The nuke comes with freezing and armor reduction features, augmenting it with extra control and blast aspects. It's not going to get you top damage anytime soon, but it's a start. Mag's Crush, similarly to Frost, is a 1500 base damage nuke. It's delivered in 3 quick bursts of 500 damage across a slightly larger range. The magnetic damage type is quite divisive, being great against Corpus and poor against stronger Grineer units. With the damage being delivered in 3 quick ticks, this actually helps Mag, as enemies cannot leave the area during casting, but additional enemies entering the area pick up the remaining damage. This slightly increases the total output you'll get out of the ability. It's still a B tier nuke, but does carry a particularly nice tank rider in the shield restoration for every enemy hit. Limbo's Cataclysm has the lowest base damage of all these nuke frames. Worse still, part of that damage cannot be increased, as the nuke is split between 500 blast damage from the ability and 300 impact damage as a consequence of enemies entering the rift. only the blast damage can be increased. The nuke only has a marginally better radius than the smallest nuke at 16 meters as well. But, unlike every other nuke on this list, Limbo's is targeted. The ability to cast the explosion at a distance allows him to project the nuke into the center of enemy clusters, not only without going to them, but also without waiting for or missing optimal clustering of enemies. This targeting ability is just enough to bring him to B tier, but it's on the low end, as the damage scales about as well as the Mark I Paris. Banshee's Soundquake isn't a nuke on its own, instead requiring the Resonating Quake augment. This turns it from a channeled blast into a nuke, switching from 200 damage per second to a staggering 4000 base damage. It's the highest range nuke by far at 35 meters, with Gara technically in second at 26, but the damage drops off with distance drastically. This nuke is blast damage, like with Rhino, but the sheer damage and range just about makes this an A tier nuke. The crowd control effect staggering enemies and knocking them back actually works against Banshee's damage, so do bear that in mind. Gara's Mass Vitrify is first and foremost a tank and control ability, and yet it can also act as a nuke. Unlike all other nukes so far, this one you need to set up, first assembling the glass wall, and then shattering it using her Shattered Lash ability. This not only has a base damage of 800, it also includes the 800 base damage from Shattered Lash, and the damage enhancement Shattered Lash gets from the equipped melee weapons damage mod. This means a base damage of 1600 that is enhanced by mods no other nuke can benefit from, even giving you some control over the damage types you are using. The range of the explosion is only 15 meters, but it's cast from the exterior of the glass wall itself, which can also be 11 meters in radius, giving a total effective radius of 26 meters, technically the second highest. However, the enemies inside the glass wall are not affected by the explosion, and the time delay between setting up and executing the nuke hold back Gara's Mass Vitrify. Still, a respectable A tier, and that's on top of its primary categories in tank and control. Ember's Inferno is the only nuke here that requires line of sight. It's also the only instance of line of sight I've ever encountered that doesn't seem to understand if something can actually be seen. Very much so in Ember's favour, so that drawback isn't as bad as it could be. The base damage is 2500 out to a lovely 25 meters, split between heat and impact. Thanks to immolation, this damage can be innately doubled. Curiously, this nuke also drains energy based on targets rather than on cast, up to a generously low limit, meaning Ember can spam the ability without wasting energy in suboptimal conditions. And, thanks to Ember's passive, if anyone survives the first nuke, the fire procs mean the next nuke does even more damage. The damage, range, and hassle-free use just about makes Inferno an S tier nuke. Those of you paying attention will have figured the final nuke on the list, and also an undeniable S tier nuke, is EQUINOX's MAIM. Like Gara's nuke, MAIM requires some setup. EQUINOX must first cast MAIM, wait for enough enemies to die within range to feed that damage into MAIM, and then release it. However, unlike any of the other nukes here, MAIM's damage is uncapped. Although holding a middling range of 18 meters, MAIM allows the detonation of any level of enemy, so long as sufficient damage is accumulated. This means MAIM is technically the only nuke to benefit from all of your weapons and from all of your allies being better. The faster everyone kills things, the stronger and more frequent EQUINOX can deliver MAIM nukes. Maim does reduce to 0 damage at maximum range, but the damage conversion feature means this nuke also does not require ability strength, allowing you to safely dump it at the high levels and still be fully effective. So, go ahead and buff that range as far as you can. As the damage type is slash, Maim's explosion is relatively weak against stronger Grineer units. All this means is you just need to stack more damage. So, that pretty much wraps up the different nukes to be found in Warframe at this time. Remember, when building your nuke frame, to incorporate both strength and range into it. A low range nuke is no nuke at all. Is this the bit where I ask you all to subscribe, like, and tell me nice things in the comments? You do you. Maybe just tell me what you'd like to see or something. I'm gonna go brew another cup of tea. Nuke away, Tenno.
Ah.
Whoa, that was a weird sound.
Whoa.